At the end of last week's episode, we ran into yet another problem with this starboard cedar plank. Aaron and I worked to scarf on one last small piece to get rid of the part that had split on the end while we were steaming it in. Once this was all done, we'd finally be ready to hang it onto the boat. So here we are, we're back in the stern. I've been working on this plank here for most of the morning and got it pretty close, but after scarfing in the new end, which is kind of a bummer, Aaron and Steve scarfed that in yesterday after it started cracking even more when Jack was still here. That means that we lost the twist back here that we had steamed in, which is kind of a bummer. It was a lot stronger back here, so I got it as close as I could, but I was still pretty far away from the rabbet over here, and I was really scared about cranking that in dry and cracking this plank as well. So Jack earlier had suggested putting some hot wet rags on the cedar and said that it makes it bend in a lot easier. So we tried that and it looks like it worked really well. I'm up against the rabbet right here. So we're gonna let this sit and take shape, and then we're gonna take the rags off and let it dry before we work it anymore. But I guess in order to keep things moving, I've been working on the other side. And it's been a little tough on all of us right now. The planking party did not turn out as we expected. When we planned the planking party, we had never expected to do steelers and these funky planks, which ended up taking us a lot longer than expected. And on top of that, there was, there is currently the issue with COVID-19, which has sent everybody home basically. Simon never got to come, which was a real bummer. And then George and Robert were here for about a week, and they ended up having to go home because otherwise they weren't going to make it back. Things are kind of shutting down everywhere. So it's been taking us a long time, which has been taking its toll on us. This definitely wasn't the planking party we expected.
How you doing, Wolf? Not actually a wolf, but you look like one. All right, good morning, folks. So it has been a long, steep learning curve with these first cedars and doing the spiling, and thankfully we had Jack here to kind of lead us in that because he's actually had experience doing that before. But with COVID-19 and all the craziness that's going on, everybody for the planking party has cleared out and gone home, which we believe to be the correct call, with one exception, and that's Aaron. He's still here because he lives like a whopping 5 miles down the road and could literally walk there through the woods if push came to shove. So he's been hanging around and helping us out and quarantining here with us, which we've been very thankful for. So the mission today is this first cedar is fit and painted. So we're gonna smear on some dolphinite. Aaron's firing up the air compressor now, and we're gonna get to fastening the first cedar on the boat. Woohoo! It's been a long journey getting there, especially with the planking party just going bust. COVID-19 really kind of threw a wild card in there, and I'm sure it's done far worse for many of you. So really, we can't complain. We're in pretty good shape, and we hope that everyone else is staying safe and staying healthy and doing what they can so that we can all get through this together and get back on to more of a normal life, which I'm sure at this point you're all anxious to do. I know we are. So without further ado, we're gonna smear on some dolphinite, get this plank wrestled on, and fasten the first cedar.
Some of you have wondered why we are switching to cedar now and we aren't continuing with the oak all the way up to the shear. First of all, the oak is heavier than it looks on video, and it would be much too heavy for the boat. You'll just have to take our word for it. And all that density is very strong, but it's also hard on the tools and on us. So, moving to Cedar will be easier during the build, but it will also lighten Arabella's overall weight once she's all finished. She was actually designed to be completely planked in Cedar. So even though we're not thinking she'll make any speed records, we definitely want to avoid too much weight. Other aspects of the Cedar have not worked in our favor. This first starboard plank was repaired 3 times after sections of it checked and formed big cracks that we couldn't avoid. So as light as it is, it's shown itself to be pretty fragile so far compared to the oak, and it has set us back quite a bit on time. But as long as you can all bear with it too, we've got plenty of that to spare. We're also trying to figure out if there are other ways that we could plank the boat, so please bear with us.
Yesterday, Aaron and I worked on the port side Cedar here. So we got the starboard done the other day. And we worked together on the nib where it fits the steeler and the stern. Once we got that good to go, I left Aaron to work on fitting the stern in. And I kind of worked my way up the boat and worked on getting the stem fit. So I'm pretty happy with the stem. I got to go down and just check the plank fit from the inside of the boat and figure out some caulking bevels. But it's looking really close. And Aaron's got the stern down to a point where we're getting pretty close there as well. We didn't put the camera on Aaron yesterday because he's learning how to do this. He's never fit a plank into the stern of a double under like this before. And I know what it's like to be trying to do things for the first time with a camera over your shoulder. And it definitely adds to the anxiety a little bit. So we spared him that yesterday. But let's go back to the stern, and maybe Aaron will be kind enough to walk us through what he was doing back there and how that's all going. All right, let's see how Aaron's doing back here. How goes the battle, Aaron?
It's going. It's getting close back here. So when we finished up yesterday, me and Steve had been working together at the forward end of the steeler here, getting this joint really tight, getting the cedar plank set down and aft tight against it. Just shaving off the bottom here and a little over here to get the set nice. And then we've just been slowly working it aft using the clamps and the ratchet straps here, the come-alongs, which have been proven to be a very versatile tool at this point. So yeah, just working it back, shaving off the high spots. So what we're looking at today for starting off is we're just going to finish up the stern here where it sets into the rabbet. I had been working the bevel back, so the bevel where it meets the top of the oak steeler below it. Gonna keep trimming away on that as needed, and sneaking up on it by shaving off the very end of the hood there where it sets into the rabbet, and keep working it down.
So this is the gap here that Aaron needs to close up a little bit. And as you can see, he can't do that because we're hitting the stern here. So shave a little bit off the stern, and then we can start to close up that gap. But it's really not much, not a big gap at all. So I'll leave you to work on that, and I'm gonna run down the boat and just start checking caulking bevels and the fit on the rest of it. And then should be able to hopefully be done fitting this without too much further trials and tribulations.
Great plan. Happy to be a part of it.
Hopefully it'll be pretty close and all we'll have to do is a caulking bevel. But the only way to figure out is to walk down it and see how it looks. So I'll do that on the outside of the hull, and then I'll jump in and do that on the inside of the hull. And I should be done with that by the time Aaron's done with the stern, and hopefully we'll be able to take this plank off, do the caulking bevels and any last little details like backing out or maybe tweaking one of the frames a little bit, and then should be ready for paint. But really looking forward to getting these curved cedars on the boat. It has been kind of a long struggle and a pretty big learning curve. The cedar, it just behaves so differently than the oak. The oak, it's a lot harder to work, you know, it's much tougher. So it's really nice to work with the cedar. It's like works like butter in comparison. But the oak, because it's so much tougher and tighter grained, that it really just kind of handles being coerced into shape. So a bunch of clamps, some straps to really kind of push it where it needs to go, and it seems to be fine. Leave it clamped to the boat for 24 hours, take it off, and it more or less stays the shape it was in when it was on the hull. It's pretty impressive how, I don't know, kind of malleable it is. The cedar, on the other hand, is not that way. It doesn't adapt to that form as well as the oak does, and it really does not like to twist. So that's been some of the stuff we've been struggling with and learning. But we're getting there, and this should be probably, if not the hardest cedar on the boat. So nothing like trying to do the trickiest planks with the least amount of experience, right? Seems to be the story of our lives with this, but it's a good challenge. We're getting there, and I'm gonna go mark these and see what we got. As you can see, it's not a terribly big gap, but it's a big enough of a gap that needs to be fixed. So right in through here, we're open a bit on the outside edge. We're touching on the inboard edge. And I've got my notes here. So this is kind of the center where it's tightest, and I've got either side marked out. And then I just need to flatten that inner bevel a little bit, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch, because it's touching on the inboard edge and it's open on the outside edge. And we've got a little bit of an even bigger gap over here. So since we've got a gap over here, we've got a gap over here, and we're touching in the middle, if you shave this down just a little bit, shave this down in here just a little bit, we should be able to get these couple little gaps we got to close up. Now the other thing is I don't have any wedges in here, we don't have any straps. I'm willing to bet if we threw a strap on here, we could just suck these right out, but I'd like to try to keep the top edge of the plank fair. So when we take it off, we'll just trim that a little bit, but the rest of it looks really, really nice and tight. So now I'm going to jump on the inside of the boat here. We'll come through and check and see what they look like from the inside. I'm assuming they're all going to be pretty tight. They're all looking good from the outside. And then, yeah, let's see what needs to be done. But it's looking good. So, while Aaron's continuing to work on the stern, I got my marks all for the rest of the plank. I went down to the wood yard and grabbed a chunk of locust here. This is what we're going to use for a pair of butt blocks. So part of the reason, a big part of the reason for scarfing the planks on the boat is to avoid butt blocks. But we put in the steeler, and the steeler has that nib on it, which is going to require a butt block. Not a big deal, falls in a good spot on the boat, won't cause any problems. And we're going to use some of this locust for that. So I'm just going to take the chainsaw here and cut off a chunk that'll be a bit bigger than we need. Bring it in the boathouse, start knocking it down to size a little bit so that while we continue to work on the planks and get them fastened, this locust can have a little more time to dry and season in the nice dry boathouse. It won't get too much drier over the next few days, but it will help a little bit. And it keeps me busy while Aaron's working. He's doing a great job, but it takes a little bit of time, and anytime you do something for the first time that's tricky with high consequences, you go slowly, which he's doing and doing well. So, fire this rig up. Stuff cleans up real nice, huh? So this is obviously way too thick. We want the butt blocks to be about the same thickness as the planking. So we're going to start with a tad over 1.5 inches, and then that'll let us back it out and fit it to the hull and still end up about 1.25 inches at the thinnest parts. So right now, this chunk of locust is 2.25. So it's way too thick, and I don't want to run it through the planer 1,000,000 times to take it down. But I did want to run it through the planer enough to really be able to see what's going on. So we've got a couple small knots on this side, and they're bigger on this side. This is a real nice clear run here on both sides. So since the knots look less ideal on this side, we're going to lop that off. So I'm just going to take and mark the edge, set the bandsaw, and rip it through. And then go throw it through the planer 1 or 2 more times, slap some linseed oil on it, and stick it on the shelf and give it a little while to season and make sure it behaves. And as long as it behaves well and seems good, in a few days when we get the last cedar on the boat, we'll be able to fit these butt blocks. All right. Anybody need a locust veneer? So, just gonna go throw that through the thickness planer one more time, smooth this face out, and like I said, slap some linseed oil on it and stick it in the corner, and just give it a few days until it's ready to be fit, and see how it behaves. It's just kind of nice when I'm cutting out of a big chunk like this that maybe isn't totally seasoned, to knock it down to size and give it a few days. Because if it's going to do anything real hinky, it'll probably show signs in the next few days. So it's a little bit better to give it just, you know, that little bit of time than to take that big chunk of timber and cut it right down and bolt it into the boat. Because if it misbehaves after bolted in, it's going to be a real pita. Pain in the beep.
Now we have a little bit of news for you, and I don't want you to get alarmed, but I'm going to be taking a hiatus from the project from the next couple of months. We obviously have taken on a huge undertaking here, and we've been doing this for the last 4 years straight, living together at the same time. So now we need a little bit of a break. We've been trying to get breaks in, but with all the setbacks that we've been having, things have just been falling through time and again. The original plan was for me to take off this summer and go do a wilderness first responder course out in Colorado with Kira, and then head off on a Knowles mountaineering and canoeing course in the Yukon. And due to COVID, that has been canceled. And actually, today was supposed to be the day that Steve was supposed to come back from Holland from a trip the last couple of weeks to take a little break after the planking party, and that fell through because of COVID. So although the videos are going to continue, don't worry about that. Steve is going to do a little bit more of his style and have the GoPros, and Ben is going to come in and shoot every once in a while. And so we're going to do a little bit of a switch up on the project for a little bit, kind of take a little break for the summer, and then we'll be back. Hopefully this whole planking thing will be over. We can start moving on to different projects, and we should get a lot more work done. So thank you all so much for the support, for all of you that are supporting us on Patreon. We just really love sharing this with you all, and I'll see you when I get back.